Hey there gamers, welcome back to the Board Game Co channel, and today we have a preview of Alexandria. Hey there gamers, it's Professor Meg here, and welcome back to the Board Game Co channel. Today we have a preview of Alexandria by Meeple Pug. Now this is a current GameFound campaign, so you can check out the link down below for everything that they have planned. This is a sponsored preview, and this is a prototype copy in front of me, so all rules, components, things like that are subject to change. And if you'd like to see exactly how this game plays, there's already a gameplay on the channel between myself, Alex, and AP, so you can see exactly how this game plays out, because in Alexandria, players are going to have 5 rounds where they're playing as these very asymmetric factions that are all contributing to Alexandria itself. So you are all going to be interacting with these different baskets, and you're going to be doing this in different ways, where the harvesters, for example, are going to be the ones really creating goods in their raw form. Perhaps you're getting fish or grapes, and then you're going to have the crafters that are then taking those different goods and turning them into something a bit more luxurious that other players might want. But in order to do so, all of these different goods are going to be exchanged through these central baskets. So players over the course of each round are going to draft dice for the different actions that they're going to take, and then they're going to use those dice to activate the different actions in their player board, which again are going to be very specific to the particular faction that they are playing as, and it's going to give them different ways to gain points, because in this game you're going to gain points throughout the game for the different actions that you're doing, as well as some sweet end game victory points as well, so that you have some things for you to plan toward. So with that, let's take a look at Alexandria. Now, this is the central board of Alexandria, and it's going to have 2 main parts to it, where players are going to be placing out their different buildings in this shared area here, and then this is also those baskets that I mentioned, where players are going to be using this to interact with goods. So you're going to be using this to buy and sell goods, but you're also going to be using it to make requests. So as you can see from these first 4 tokens here, these are a certain type of token to show that this is actually a request and those players want to purchase that particular type of good, whereas these ones here are goods that are for sale. Now, we'll get into the details of everything as we go through the different actions that players will be doing, but a few other things to note is going to be your victory point track along the top of the board, as well as this wheel over here that players are going to be selecting actions from each round. Now, finally, up here you can see are the dice, and those dice are also going to be rolled each round and then drafted by players for the actions that they're going to do. So I'm going to go over the exact format of what each round is going to look like, but just so you understand everything that is going on the main board here. And then each player is going to have their own player board where they have different actions that are available. So I'll start to walk us through a round so that you can see how players are going to be activating the different actions on their player boards. Now, in order to take actions, players need to draft action dice. So you're going to do that at the beginning of each round, where you're going to roll all of the action dice, which represent the different actions players are able to take, as well as the different strengths of those actions. And then you're going to draft them in initiative order, one at a time, until all players have 3. So you'll have 3 available to you, and then you'll select which ones you activate your different actions with. But first and foremost, players are going to roll these dice and then draft them all to determine what they're able to do that round. Now, for the sake of the example, I am going to have us draft 1 of each type just to show you what the different actions are going to look like, but I will go over what the other extra sides are as well for the dice. So I'm going to draft these, and then I am just going to go through the actions that the harvester is able to do, because some of them are going to be shared with other factions. So after I go through the harvester, I'll let you know the differences between the other factions as well. Now, once all players have their 3 dice, you're going to then place for the different spots within this wheel of time. The player that is lowest on the initiative, which is on this tower here, which you're not able to see, but the phalanx, which is going to be the black army based faction, is going to be able to set what this is, again, because they are lowest in initiative. Now, this dial is going to block out certain rewards, and this is just going to represent rewards that players are able to get for this particular round, and it will be used each round in the same fashion. So for example, if they chose to set it something like this, then players are going to, in the order of victory points, select what they would like to do. So in this example, the harvesters would select first, and then after that it would be the crafters, and then the architects, and then the phalanx, because that is the order on the track over there. So we do have a few options of what we're able to gain. There are certain things that may not make sense to you yet, such as a scroll. We'll go over that in a little bit, but there are things that you're able to get, such as money. Now we do start with a little bit of money, victory points, as well as a Rosetta Stone, which again is going to be a resource that is pretty useful for you. But I'm going to have us choose this here, which is going to be a Pharaoh's Flame. So in order to select what we're going to do, again, the phalanx player would have set how this dial is, and then as the harvester, because we are lowest here, we're going to select what we want to do before anyone else. So we're going to take this symbol here, and because it has this +1 with how the dial was set, we're actually going to get 2. So that's going to be 2 of these flames for us, which is going to be very important at the end of the round, so I'll go over what those mean then. Now again, all players would select the reward that they would like from the wheel, where they would block off the particular reward, meaning that other players can't take it that round, but these tokens will come off at the end of the round, meaning that the rewards will be available again in a future round. And again, whoever is lowest in initiative order is going to set the dial, meaning that it will change round over round depending on what that player wants. Now after that, players are going to use their 3 action dice in initiative order, where one player is going to use one of their dice to select one of their actions they're going to activate, and then after that it will go on to the next player in initiative order until all players have spent all 3 of their dice. Now I am going to go over the different actions, but just note this game is a lot of game, and with the terminology it may feel confusing when you're just hearing it. That playing it is very intuitive, but when you're hearing it there is a buying and selling as well as requesting and offering, so there are different things that players are going to be doing, and I am going to go through it, but just know that I'm not going to go too deep into detail because I feel it just may be a little confusing. Now, we are able to select any of the dice that we want, but I am going to have us choose this first one, which is going to be the green one, and it does have these scrolls on it. It also has the Rosetta Stone, which again is a resource that you're able to spend these to adjust the faces of this, or to take an additional bonus from the Wheel of Time. So you are able to spend these to take anything that isn't covered, but again, keep in mind there will be 4 of them covered from different players for the round. So that is something that you're able to gain, and perhaps you'll also spend those Rosetta Stones for something else as well. But there are these scrolls. So we did have the 2, meaning that it's going to be a strength of 2, but if we did have a higher number, it would be a higher strength. So I am going to use this, and then I'm going to slot it into one of these areas here. Now, where there are some goods that are available to be purchased on the board, we may choose to buy. So we can place this over here, and then when you're activating this, you're slotting your die into one of these spots, and then you're activating both the top action that corresponds with that column, as well as the die that you have placed. So you are able to do this in any order that you would like. So we are able to use this scroll ability first, which I'm going to have us do. So all players have these bags where they have different scrolls inside of them, and they're going to be used generally the same way for most players. But where this is a strength 2, we're going to draw 2 from the bag to give us some options. So these are going to be able to augment the different actions that we're doing, where this one you can see that we are able to offer an additional good, or this one is going to boost this action here for us. So I am going to have us choose to boost this action, and I'm going to place this over here though, where we're going to be using, over here where we're going to be using this in the future. So this one will go back into our bag, so we are still able to get it in the future. And again, if we had a higher number, such as a 4, we would have drawn 4 from our bag instead to be able to have more of a variety to choose from. Now for our buy action here, we are going to choose to buy this bread resource here, which is going to do a few things for us. But we are going to have to pay the cost that we are buying, which is going to be 3. So we will pay our 3 money back to the bank to be able to take this here. And this is going to be placed into our player board. Now, as you may see underneath all of these different resources, there is a building icon with a +1. At the beginning of the game, players are able to have up to 2 buildings because they have 2 population, and this is going to increase your population. So we would now be able to have up to 3 buildings out now that we have this bread here. Additionally, this is going to give us victory points at the end of the game because the amount of buildings that you have out is going to award more victory points if you have more out. And now that this basket is empty, it's also going to slide down. And as you can see, not everything are goods within these baskets. Here we have an event which is going to happen for players once it resolves. And these are also raids which are going to be specific to the Phalanx player. Now, finally, for our buy action, we're going to be able to gain 2 Doxa as well. So that's going to gain us 2 over here, moving up the track, and different actions will award different amounts of victory points for players. For example, if we were to sell instead, we would gain 3 Doxa, and you'll see us do a few other actions in the future as well. Now, that would complete a turn for us, and all other players would then go. So again, keep in mind that players would also have drafted 3 dice of their own and be activating their own actions. I'm going to go over the actions that they're able to do, but I'm not going to walk us through in this much detail. Now, the next thing I'm going to have us do is activate. So we do have this activate here, and that's going to allow us to offer goods. So we're going to use this die as well as our offer action over here, because those are going to work really well together. So for this particular player, the Harvester, this is how they're going to generate the different goods that they have. So you can see that we start off with 1 building over here, and it's currently producing stone. So this is going to be a strength 3 action, but because we slotted this scroll here, it's actually a strength 4 for us instead. So we're going to shuffle up our cards here, and then we're going to draw 4 cards because this is a strength 4. So we're going to draw 4 and look at them, and then we're going to have to pay the cost that is in this corner here, and the card is going to have a value of this number here. Now, all of these cards have the same chart, but basically you're trying to hit 8, because 8 is going to produce the most goods for you as well as victory points, and if you hit 9, you will bust. So you don't want to go as high as 9, but you can see that our 6 is currently here as well as our 5. Now we do have a 7, but the 7 would require a 1 to be able to match with this 8. So I think in this instance it is safest for us to keep the 3, even though I am tempted for us to keep the 6. I am going to have us keep the 3 because after this we're going to do this one more time, and that's how you have the randomness that you're not sure exactly what cards you're going to be able to pair together. But the higher the number is for your activation, the more flexibility you have as well as knowledge. Because as I said, we know that we have a 7 coming, and here's our 6 and our 5. So let's see what we were able to draw for our second hand. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's only 1 card left that we're not drawing. And then we're going to take a look at these, and the highest that we're able to do is a 7. Now, again, you're trying to get as close to 8 as possible because a 7 for us is going to provide us 2 goods as well as 2 victory points. But if we were lower, we would have less. So we are going to choose to do that, but it is going to cost us some money. So here it's going to be 2 negatives, where some of these cards actually do have positive values when they're a little bit cheaper, so you're able to offset them a little bit better. But this is going to cost us 4 money, so we will pay that into the bank and make some change for ourselves. But then we're going to be able to use the 7, which is going to be 2 and 2 victory points. So we're going to gain 2 victory points for ourselves for that. And then we're also going to gain those 2 stone. So players have these dashboards that's going to store everything that you need for your particular faction. And so these that we created are going to come here into our supply that we're able to use in the future. So I'm actually going to show you what that looks like right now, because the other action that we selected is offer. So we actually would be able to create up to 2 offers, but where we only have 1 type of good here, we're only able to create 1 offer. Now, with how we just produced goods, if we did have more buildings, we would be able to produce goods up to the number of that is on our die here for our buildings. So for example, where this was a 4, we would be able to produce up to 4 different types of goods, and the number would be determined by the cards that we flipped over. Now you can see why we would want to have many different types of goods out there, but so that is where our stones are going to be placed. But then when we activate this offer action, we're actually going to be offering them out for other players to purchase. So in order to do so, we're going to take one of our player markers here and put it here in this empty basket to mark that we now have this basket, and we're going to place our stones here. So this is going to show that players are able to currently buy them for only $2 for 2 money, but as this slides down the track, they're going to get more and more expensive the longer that they're here. And finally, again, for this particular action, we would gain 2 doxa. So we would gain 2 more points for ourselves for completing that particular action. And again, keep in mind, other players will also be gaining victory points on their turns. I'm just only simulating our particular turn. So now to move us on to our final die for you to see what that would look like, this is going to be the build action. So in order to build, you need a few things, but we're going to do this and place it over here. So this is going to show that we're able to request up to 2 different items, gaining a victory point for each of them. And we're also able to build with a value of 2. Now, when you're building with a value of 2, you're able to build either 2 buildings, or you're able to use one or both of those to exchange the tokens that you have on your building instead. So if we did already have more buildings out, but we wanted to exchange 2 of the tokens, we would be able to do that for one of the actions, and you are able to build one and then exchange the other if that's what you'd like to do. So in order to build somewhere, depending on your faction, you're able to build in particular places. So all of the factions you see here, which are going to be the architects, the craftsmen, and the phalanx, are going to be in this central area. But the harvesters are going to be on the edges of the map in these different green field areas. So they're the only ones that are able to build in those particular areas. And you're going to be paying the cost that are in these tokens, which are randomly placed out at the beginning of the game. So if we did want to, for example, build in one of these spots, we would pay 4 money for this, and then we would place out one of our buildings here with a token on it. So we would place that out with the particular thing that we are able to then create when we activate. And again, this is where your population is really going to matter, because you do have 6 different buildings that you're able to create and place out, but you'll have to increase your population to be able to be placing those out. Now, once the action phase is done, players are going to go on to the timeline phase, and this is going to be resolving the baskets and different things that are in the timeline, because players are going to be placing things out. People are also going to be purchasing things from the different baskets, but things are always going to be in flux at the end of the round as well. So you're going to resolve baskets that are on the timeline, both specific ones for players as well as just ones that are closest to the edge. And this is going to resolve baskets, but it's also going to resolve the raids as well as events for players. At the beginning of the timeline phase, players are going to gain drachma, which is going to be money, for the number of luxury resources that they have. So, for example, here, if we did have all 6, we would gain 6 money, but if we only had 2, we would gain that 2 for ourselves. So you're going to gain this every round, and then you're going to resolve a player's token from the rightmost side. So if all of these were still here at the end of the round, all of these would be resolved for 1 for each of the players, starting with the rightmost side. So even though this token is out here, this would be the one to resolve for this player. So this is a request from the harvesters for meat, meaning that for this to resolve, the player would have to pay 5 money to gain a meat resource for themselves that they would be able to place into their player board, and if they couldn't afford it, they would simply take their token back and this basket would be emptied, and then everything would slide down. Then it would move on to the next player, so as you can see, everything will slide, where this will cost 5, everything will cost 5 for all of these players, and this would not cost 4 for the phalanx player because they would all slide before the next one is resolved. So these are all requests where players would be purchasing things, but if this basket were to be over here at the very end, it would sell instead, but the sell price for it is only $1. So the player would only gain $1 for that, meaning that it's in their best interest for things to sell up higher here in the timeline to other players. So first, you would start from the rightmost side and do one for each player, and even if the green player only had one way over here, that would be the one to activate for them. But once all of that has been resolved, you're also going to resolve 3 baskets starting from the rightmost side regardless of whose they are. And this is how the events are going to trigger, as well as the raids. So when an event is triggered over here on this side of the timeline, it's going to activate for all players. And for example, this one is going to be, you're going to gain a doxa for every scroll that you have. So if that were to resolve this round, this player would be able to gain 1 victory point because they currently have that 1 scroll that they placed. Now, the raids I will go over when I go over the failings player, but the next thing that would happen is the Pharaoh's phase. So during the Pharaoh's phase, you're going to compare how many of these Pharaoh's flames that players have, and then you will adjust the initiative based on that. So the Harvester would stay on top in initiative because they already were at the top and they have 2 here. And even if another player had 2, they would need 3 to be able to beat someone who is higher than them in initiative. But this is how you're going to change that every round. And where players are at the end of the game is going to award victory points. So that's why initiative is really going to matter round over round. It's going to determine quite a few things, such as the dice that you're drafting first, the actions that you're able to take, but ultimately those victory points at the end of the game are going to make a huge impact as well. Now, that is going to be the gameplay loop that you're going to play through round over the course of 5 rounds. So you're going to go through these different phases and ultimately using these different actions to gain doxa, which is victory points for yourself, but you're also going to plan for that endgame scoring as well. And one of the things that players are able to do is work toward these royal seals. So players are going to all start with 1 at the beginning of the game, and you'll gain more as you meet certain victory point thresholds, but you're going to be gaining these and trying to accomplish them. So for example, this one is 5 scrolls, and if we are able to accomplish that, we'll gain 3 victory points at the end of the game. Now, for the crafter faction, as you can imagine, they're trying to gain basic resources from the harvester and then turn them into different things. So they have some luxury goods here that they're able to create, but they also have some food items such as bread and beer, and then they also create things such as weapons and armor for the failings faction. So they're going to be turning things into things, and to do so, they have to have these buildings out here with a particular type of token. So here you can see that this is a bread, meaning that this player wants to collect the wheat tokens to then turn into bread. So when they use the activate action, which is going to be this blue symbol here, they're going to use that to generate the bread for themselves by paying tokens of the wheat to turn into bread. Now, all of these actions are the same as the harvester, so they're able to buy, sell, request, and offer, as well as boosting the action, which is this spot here. So when this one is placed, you're able to perhaps do a 4 strength for that, but that is how the crafter is going to be turning things into things that are then going to be offered up for sale to other players. And again, the actions that they're taking are going to gain them victory points as well. But a lot of the things that they're going to be creating are going to be the luxury goods that players are placing into their player boards, as well as the things that are needed to increase their population. Now, speaking of these luxury resources that players are going to be able to slot into their player board, once you do have these, not only are they going to give you that income each round, but you're also going to be able to activate the ability that is there. So there's going to be some such as gaining victory points or money, or those Pharaoh's flames, or a scroll, but this one is going to be setting a die to a particular face, meaning that you're able to do a specific face that you want, and this one is going to be resolving a request basket that you have. So if you were to do this, then you would be able to, as an action, resolve a basket that you have a request for. Otherwise, players are able to sell to requests to give players those tokens instead, and that's how you would be gaining those different items. One other thing to note, the other signs on the pink die, apart from build, are going to be boosting actions as well as money. So you're able to increase the strength of the action that you're doing or gain money if those are the sides that you have. And then the blue die is going to have the boost, but it also has that Pharaoh's Flame. So that's going to be another way that players are able to gain those flames for the round. Now, the architects over here are going to be the ones that are working on the monuments that are being built out throughout Alexandria. So they do want to be building, they like working with stone, they do also like collecting things such as the luxury goods and increasing their population, but they actually have a passive ability. So players are going to be, again, putting their buildings into these different plots here, and they all have a cost, but the architect player is going to be able to choose to take some of that money if they'd like. So, for example, where this spot here costs 10 money, a player would have to have that 10 money and be able to pay it to take this slot. And then if the architect player wants to, they're able to gain this token here, and they would gain 5 money, as well as the other player gaining 5 money because this cost 10. So they would gain half, and the player that paid the money would gain half back. So it kind of helps the other players gain money. It also helps the architect gain money, but it also helps them gain these tokens, which they're able to turn into victory points later. Now, they also have this special action, which is called Epidosis, and this is one where they're able to perhaps make a parlay with other players, where they make a request of them to, in initiative order, either give 1 stone, 5 money, or 1 luxury good from... Now, the architects also have this action called Epidosis, and this is something that they're able to do where they are trying to work with the other players, where players are able to give them either 1 stone, 1 luxury resource that they still need for their board, or 5 money, and if they do so, they're able to gain a victory point as a reward, but if no players do so, then the architects will gain 2 victory points instead. So it's a way for the architects to either gain some resources, some money, or ultimately some victory points for themselves. Now, finally, the architects are trying to place out these different monuments out on the board, and the monuments are going to all have different abilities that you're able to do, but in order to place them out, they would be activating this action here. And when you do so, you are going to gain 5 victory points, but it's going to cost everything that is down here unless you have the scroll that is blocking it. So if you do have the scroll slotted, then you have the cost covered. Otherwise, you would have to pay, for example, here, a stone for money as well as a glass to be able to place out the monument. So this player is then going to place their monuments out along the board, and these are going to activate for when a player has been next to it for that player, but then in the future, anything that is built next to it is also going to activate that particular ability. Now, these abilities could include things such as gaining a Rosetta Stone or a victory point, but the player would also have to have the token there for that particular monument to be able to build it next to it. So you do have to have the building out to know what buildings are going to be placed out there. For example, this one is setting a die to a particular side, but that's also going to let players know where certain monuments might be placed based on where those different builders are. Now, finally, we have the Phalanx character, and they're going to be the one that is involved with the raids. So they're going to be attempting to defend Alexandria from the different raids, and they're going to be doing so with these tokens here. So they do start off with 6 of them at the beginning of the game of certain values, but you also have a bag that you're going to be drawing these tokens from that are going to have different values for you. So the first thing that the Phalanx are going to be able to do is reinforce, which is this action here, and that's how you're going to be gaining more of those tokens. These are going to be their scrolls, but you're going to be gaining these. So you're going to use that action to draw 3 of these and return 1 to the bag. So here we have a strength 2, a strength 1, and a strength 1. So we'll probably choose to put one of the 1s back, but as you can see, there are also these abilities here. So we'll choose to put this one back and keep both of these. Now, for the Phalanx player to activate with the blue die, this is how they're going to be placing out these different combat tokens. So for example, I'm going to have us place this over here just to go through what combat in a raid is going to look look like. But when we place that there, we're then going to take these and look at the strength value and place them out into the different raids. Now, where that activation die is a 3, we're going to place out 3 in our different raids. So I'm just going to have us do a strength 2, a strength 1, a strength 2, a strength 1, and then we'll put another 2 here and a 1 over here. So that's going to be the 3 for each raid that we're going to place out, and we do still have these 2 left over because we're only able to place out 3 based on the activation die that we have over there. Now, after that, we're able to do a combat with the action that is above it. And before moving on, we're going to choose with that action to either gain a Pharaoh's Flame, which will help us with initiative, or +1 to our combat, which will help us with the raids. So in this instance, I would have us choose the Flame to have us move ahead in initiative. And then after that, we will resolve this raid. Now for combat, you select a raid from the timeline, so we will choose this one, and then we are going to reveal it and calculate the power totals. So we currently here have a 5. We chose to take the flame. This we are going to flip over, and it is a strength of 1, and you're also going to add words in the timeline. So if you wait and let them get closer, they're going to increase in strength, but we were able to easily beat this, so we're going to gain the rewards shown. So it's going to be 1 Doxophorus and 1 Drachma, meaning the victory point as well as a money for us, and then this will be removed from the timeline, so everything would then slide down. Now, if we had lost that combat, we would have to put a token over here into our raids lost. But where we won, we will have to place one over here into our raids won instead. So that's where these symbols are going to come into play that are on the back of the tokens. So if we wanted 2 money, for example, we would slot this over here into our raids won. And for the failings player, they're going to be gaining money every round based on the number of raids won, as opposed to luxury resources, because they don't care about the luxury resources, they care more about these raids that are completed. So they are still trying to collect things such as weapons and armor, which will activate certain abilities for them, but they're also going to be placing tokens down here every time that there is a combat, whether they have won or lost the raid. Now, during combat, there are ways for players to help the failings as well, but I'm not going to go over those details. But another thing to note is that when players are playing with that particular faction, other players, when they use the activate die, are able to use 1 less activation. So for example, where this is a 3, the Harvester would be able to treat it as a 2 and instead take a Pharaoh's Flame, because the failings do have a way to get ahead in initiative. So that is the way for players to be able to gain some flames for themselves when this faction is in play. But when that does happen, the Phalanx will automatically place 1 combat token on a raid in the timeline. So that's going to be a way for the Phalanx to be able to place out some tokens for the raids that will be happening in the future for them. Now, endgame scoring is going to have players gaining points both for things that all players are able to do, as well as some things that may be specific to their particular faction. So for your endgame scoring, you are going to take your current score, and then you're going to add a few things to it. So players are going to gain points for the initiative track, where the player that is at the top of the track will gain 10 victory points, and then 6, 3, and 1, respectively, for the players that are below them in initiative. And then after that, players are also going to gain points for their current population. So you'll gain, again, the same number of points. Now for this, if players were able to have all of their population out, they're able to gain 10 victory points for themselves. But for example, if you only had 4 buildings out, you would still gain 3 victory points. So players are going to gain victory points from that. But then players are going to gain victory points for things that may be specific to their particular faction. So, for example, the Phalanx will gain victory points for the raids that they have won, and many of the factions will gain victory points for the buildings that they have placed out on the board and their adjacency there. Then players will also gain victory points for those royal seals that I mentioned if they were able to complete them. There's also a conversion for any leftover resources where you'll gain some victory points for those as well as money. And then you will see where players land out at the end of the game. Overall, Alexandria is going to provide a highly asymmetric experience where players are really going to be playing into their particular roles for their faction, trying to use that to get the most victory points possible for themselves. So everyone is going to be following the same general pacing where you are drafting out these different action dice, using them to perform these different actions, and you're also all doing similar things such as fighting for initiative, trying to get to the top of that track, or placing out your different buildings. But the way that you are behaving with these different baskets for the things that you are selling and buying, as well as offering, or perhaps you are engaging with the raids, as well as making the best use of the different events that are coming out and gaining some extra victory points there for yourself, players are going to be doing same things in some ways and different things in other ways. So your factions are really going to feel very true to the different actions that they are trying to do, where the harvesters really feel like they are creating most of the goods for everyone, but then those goods are being refined by the crafters and turned into things, whereas the architects really are building out these different monuments throughout the board, showing what they're planning to do, and the phalanx are going to be sure to handle these different raids because they are just braced for combat. So again, as I said, if you'd like to see exactly how this game plays, there is a gameplay on the channel that you are able to check out, and there's a link down below so you can see everything that MeeplePug currently has planned in their campaign. Thank you all for watching the Board Game Co channel. I've been Professor Meg, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!